home tonight so I could show you all this that I happened to read today. Romans 12:12 says, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. Rejoice in hope. God said hope is something to get us excited, to get us rejoicing. There's another verse about hope that says hope does not disappoint. When you have something, a word that means a steadfast assurance that it's coming to pass, it's going to happen, we just got to wait on it. God said that's something that can never disappoint you. God is not going to leave you hanging. So much of our life is about disappointment. People let us down. Circumstances let us down. My brother said to me on the phone the other day, we were talking about the reality of life and how it gets hard sometimes. He said, wouldn't it be great if everything just turned out the way you thought it was when you were 17 years old? When you're 17, are you guys 17, any of y'all? 18.
That would not be great.
But yeah, it'd probably not be great. Yeah, the way
That'd be one world of trouble.
Yeah, it'd probably be a very troublesome place. But the way we think sometimes things are going to happen, they don't always happen, And he was talking to me about that. But life can let us down like that. But hope does not disappoint, the Bible says. God's not going to let us down. He's not going to promise us one thing and give us another. And this is what Peter says about it. He says that we have this living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Because Jesus not only died for our sin to take care of that curse of sin that's on the planet, to pay for it, and give us an opportunity to trust Him and let Him forgive our sin, He said He also rose from the dead so we could have hope for eternal life. That we could have not just an absence of the old person that's messed up and flawed, we get a new person. We also get a hope for brand new life flowing through us and in us and in every way. God gives us life. He gives us a brand new hope, a steadfast assurance that we're going to live forever. And I think sometimes when you've been in the church for a long time, these kind of concepts just kind of become old hat to us because we know it's real and we kind of acknowledge the truth of it. But we forget what a great promise it is that this is not the end on this planet. This is just the beginning. That God's promised us an eternity with Him in heaven. And heaven is such an awesome place that the Bible really doesn't even give us a whole lot of details about it. And I think it's because we probably can't fathom it where we're at right now. We can't understand it. I told people before if somehow we could time travel back right now and we could get some of these Bible guys like Peter and just transport them instantly into our day, we would probably give them a stroke, a heart attack. They wouldn't even be able to process what they're seeing. To sit them down in front of a television and say, look at this, and watch 12 hours of Aaron Rodgers coverage. They wouldn't even be able to process how there are people in a little box, and they're not really there. They're someplace else, and it's electronic images. Our minds would be so blown by the spiritual afterlife, by being with God in His presence and how awesome it's going to be, that He just gives us little bits and little pieces and little glimpses of what it's going to be like. But He promises us that it's going to be a new hope that will not disappoint us, that will not let us down. It'll be beyond your wildest dreams. Every time I think about this stuff, you guys have heard me say this, but this sticks in my head that when I think about verses in the Bible like God saying He has promised us more than we can think or imagine, more than we can dream up. Now, I can dream up some kind of crazy, wild stuff, but He's talking about everybody, more than Steven Spielberg, more than George Lucas, more than the guys that made stuff like Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Avatar and all this stuff, more than those guys can dream up. God has promised for us. He has got this world waiting on us after this life for the Christ follower that it's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow my mind. We're going to step into it and be like, whoa, and angels singing and all that. I don't know what it'll be, but it's going to be absolutely awesome. And what He's saying to us, the hope is this is not the end. Danelle and I watched this ridiculous movie the other day called This Is the End. Have any of y'all seen that? I cannot highly recommend it. It's hilarious, but it's filthy and it's pretty sacrilegious. But it's just a lot of crazy stuff. But it's about Seth Rogen and James Franco and kind of the kind of pot-smoking Hollywood crowd of those 20-something guys. They're all in it, and they play themselves, and they're having a big party at James Franco's house, and all hell just breaks loose, literally, because it's the end of the world. And all these people are going up in these blue lights, and what it is it's the rapture. People are being taken away, and then all this craziness ensues on earth. And they're really kind of flawed in their whole theology of how it all works by the end of the movie, because they kind of figure out if they can just do something sacrificial, they'll be raptured up and get out. And it's not about how good you can do or how bad you are. It's about trusting in this mercy and grace. But the one thing that they do hit in the movie is there is a hope ahead for Christ followers. That there is something beyond this world. And as they're going into heaven, it's like they get to heaven. I don't want to ruin the movie for y'all, and I don't think you could ruin this movie for anybody. But when they get into heaven, there's just all this stuff going on that's probably not going to be going on in heaven, but it's beyond their wildest dreams. And heaven is definitely going to be beyond our wildest dreams. If you go watch this movie, please don't get to the heaven part and say, this is what heaven's going to be like, and jumps mind. That is not what I think heaven's going to be like. But anyway, it's beyond their wildest dreams. And that's what God's promised us. He said there's a new hope ahead of us that will not disappoint us. And it all comes because Jesus rose from the dead to show us he has power over death, and he gives you power over death. And it might become kind of cliche and trite because we talk about it a lot in churches, but it's a reality that's waiting for us. That when we're in a room tonight where it's comfortable and everybody in here other than Becky's tooth is pretty healthy and feeling all right, it's hard to think about the reality of what's ahead. But for those loved ones of yours or family that's laying in a bed somewhere, getting close to their last breath, man, that's a big reality to hold on to. And for those of us that might walk out of here tonight and skid off the road and face that tonight, man, that is a big reality to get your mind around, that there's hope beyond this life in Jesus, that this isn't the end, this is really just the beginning. So that's kind of what God's saying here, that he's got a hope for us. And then he tells us some things about the hope, and he says that living hope brings us into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. I think that's very important. An inheritance is something you get when somebody dies, right? I mean, somebody rich in the family dies and they leave their inheritance behind, and you score big time, and you either have some money to put away and send the kids to college, or you go out and buy a Lamborghini, and you, all at once, your dreams are coming true because you've been left this great inheritance. Well, when Jesus died and he rose from the dead, he ascended into heaven, he left us an inheritance behind, and that inheritance is eternal life. And he said the things he's left us, the eternal things, the spiritual things in our life, when we focus our life around those spiritual things, those things are imperishable, is the word he uses. It means they're incorruptible, they're non-perishables. This is a weird thing to think of when you think of eternal stuff, but I think of Twinkies. Twinkies are this great cakey food that I don't know, it's probably not good for you, and it's not great, but Twinkies last forever. I mean, they just go on and on and on. If you've ever seen the movie Zombieland, Woody Harrelson's on a search for Twinkies in that movie because it's the one food that will not die. Even a zombie apocalypse, Twinkies go on. And what God promises us is there are a lot of spiritual Twinkies out there in our life. There's a lot of stuff for us that if we invest our lives in the spiritual side and the things of God and his stuff, God said that stuff doesn't fade away. It doesn't go away. It's stuff that lasts forever. In fact, there is a judgment in the Bible that God talks about at the end of time that's coming. And there's kind of really two judgments, and this is too deep to get into all this tonight. One's the sort of you're in, you're out judgment, sort of the have you become a Christ follower, have you put your faith in Jesus or have you not? And the other is a judgment of works, and it's those of us who have followed Christ. One day the Bible says are going to be judged for the works we've done or not done on this planet. And I used to be terrified about that judgment because there's a lot of stuff in there about gold being tried by fire and wood, hay, and stubble, stuff that's not worth anything we've done, being put up on a fire and burn up. And I used to get really freaked out, and I would be like, man, I'm terrified. I'm going to show up and get to this big judgment, however it happens, in heaven, before heaven, whatever takes place. And God's just going to consume all this stuff, and I'm going to be standing there with like a little nugget in my hand and saying, sorry, God, this is all I got. And I hope that won't happen. But what is so cool about God? He is so full of grace. I see that passage much differently now. I think what God is saying in that passage is the works that we do or we don't do on this earth, that are either centered in God or they're centered in us, those that are centered around God, they're like gold, and they're going to stand the trial of fire that God puts them under. And it's every little thing you've ever done that's truly God-oriented. It's that checker you were nice to in the line at Walmart because you're a Christ follower and that's what you're supposed to do. It's that person you didn't punch in the face because they talked to you in a way that you should have punched them in the face. One of the questions I had today on the little application at Bemis was, there was a ton of questions about morality and all in there. Like, have you ever punched anybody at your workplace? Have you ever wanted to punch anybody at your workplace?
Yeah, was telling me about that.
It was so crazy. They ask you all these in-depth questions, and so I just put little comments out beside mine. No, but I have wanted to go in with a gun and a bomb. I didn't do that. There was no place for that. But
They're probably laughing tomorrow. Look at this pastor's application. He's scored low on the morality.
they probably did. I was thinking about that because I was trying to be really honest on it. So you're just clicking like 1 to 4, you know, and I couldn't click everything. Just like, he's asked you stuff like, have you ever stolen anything? And you know, for like Christ follower people, that's a whole different question. So I would check no, because I know they're probably asking, have you ever gone into your factory and gone home with an engine block? But you know, technically, if you walk out of church with a pen that ain't yours, you've stolen something. And, you know, so that kind of stuff. I don't care if y'all take the pens home, by the way. That's not like a dig on y'all for taking the pens. We want you to have them and pass them around with our name on them. But
and then don't you wonder, how do they want me to answer this?
yeah, I know. You
Go
start
through your
thinking.
mind too?
You start
Yeah.
thinking all that stuff. But all those little
Yeah.
things, you know, that you've chosen to do God's way, little bitty stuff, that's all going to stand the test of the trial of fire that God puts it under, because it was truly done from a heart towards God. And it'll be tons of little stuff. It won't be the big stuff that you think. Did you move to Africa and be a missionary? That'll be on there, but that's not all of it. It's all those things last. And the part that I see differently nowadays is all this other crap we do, God's going to burn it up because he's full of grace and mercy, and there's no sin and stuff and crap in heaven like that. So he just burns it up and gets rid of all of it for us and says, you know what? This wasn't so great. It's gone. Forget it. You're not taking it with you to the other side. And it makes us refocus our attention. It's not like we're trying hard to get the nugget. It's like we want to invest in stuff that's going to last, that's going to make a difference, that's not just our little time of shortness here on this earth.
Just a little story of hope. I was coming home the other night, and I was going to go up to Walmart and took the back road, came down Cleaver Road, and all of a sudden, in my bright headlights, was a coon bigger than I've ever seen before. And growing up around here, knowing that you don't evade, because you're going to end up even worse,
Right.
you bite the bullet, and you just
Take
hope
them
for
out.
the best. Hope for the best.
Help you hit him hard and strong so he doesn't feel it.
Exactly. And then the hope is, I hope the front of my car is not completely destroyed.
Right.
And I turned around because I felt bad about hitting this raccoon, and
Right.
he wasn't in the road, so hopefully he just got kind of like stunned and blah, blah, blah. And I pulled up to my driveway, and on purpose went around the back side of the car to go into the house to turn the lights on so I could look at the front end of the car. And the front fascia, the plastic part, was moved about 1/8 of an inch away from the fender,
Oh man.
and that's it.
Oh stuff.
And I'm hoping that the raccoon was okay, because the front of my car was okay.
That's great.
So
He didn't destroy you anyway.
exactly, and I hope it didn't destroy us.
Well, we hold out hope for the raccoon. I pray that he makes it. That's awesome. But yeah, that is hope. Hope is knowing
The little
something.
things.
That's kind of our earth hope, like we've talked about. We're thinking maybe, but we don't know. But God hope is steadfast. This stuff is going to happen, y'all. When we get to heaven, all this is left behind. The bad's going to be burned up. The good's going to last forever. And it starts to make us live our life in a different way when we realize every single thing counts.